Hello, this is Dr. Harriet Fraad, bringing you Capitalism Hits Home, a show about the mutual shaping and interpenetrations of the personal sphere, the political sphere, and the economics sphere. We're taught in school that these are separate subjects, but of course they all shape each other and they all relate to each other. And I'm trying to show you the relationship between personal life and what's going on politically and socially. I should say before we start that this show is brought to you by Democracy at Work, and we hope you like it, and we hope you share it, and we hope you contribute to it. Our website is www.democracyatwork.info. Please subscribe to our emails, see what we have to offer, get messages, join us. www.democracyatwork.info. Today, I want to continue the discussion of family that I started in the last podcast, and that is looking at what are alternatives, because America's families, I have hopefully established in your mind that America's families are failing, and they were our basic support for men's emotional support. Women got support often emotionally through their friends, through their relatives, and through their children. But men were very dependent on their partners, their wives, for emotional support. And children whose economic and emotional support and upbringing, because from the very start, Americans are the most dependent of all animals in the animal kingdom. The next are elephants, but they're viable on their own as of 2 years old. So we have the greatest dependency, and therefore we need guidance and support, unlike other animals. Well, how are other countries dealing with the fact that the kind of family that emerged, the kind of nuclear isolated family that emerged after the French Revolution in France and the revolutions and changes in Britain and all over Europe, is just not viable? Well, let's look at France, because France is as racially diversified as the United States. France, unlike the United States, has depended upon reproducing workers not by immigration, but by providing for their own children. As I said before, Americans counted on immigrants. Now, in France, they realized that they have to socialize childcare. They have to provide free, universal childcare. By the time children are 3 years old, 97% of French children are in preschools, in special childcare centers, in lovely little special centers that are often architecturally designed to be appealing, where every classroom has a ratio of one full teacher with a master's degree in early childhood education, one teacher with an associate's degree in early childhood education, also a nurse to take care of children who are sick, and all medical care is provided in schools and daycares in France, and it's also free. But those daycare centers provide for toddlers' needs. Children, from the time they're born until they're 3 years old, can get paid childcare provided by the French government, costing $1 an hour. And one can be in childcare centers from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. And one goes home if you pick up your kid at 7 p.m., and they have their 3 meals served at the daycare and can be washed if they're picked up later in the evening. All of this is free and at such low cost. In the summer, They have very enriched summer programs that for the people who could afford them can't cost more than 1/15 of the family's income. And if the family has too little income, they're free. And those programs pick up kids after school in buses and take them to playing fields so they can play different sports and other activities. And that too is free in the public schools, which educate the vast majority of French children. This is a national quality system. The French are certainly no wealthier than we are, although they do not spend a huge portion of their budget on the military. But they do spend a lot on medical care and child care for their children. Also, if a child is seen to be abused in France, if they go to a daycare and they notice bruises, or if they notice that the child is too frightened or screams a lot, they look into it and they give the child and family care. If a child is shown to be abused, a social worker is assigned to their family for 5 years. And people are not abandoned when they have a child. The biggest participants in child abuse in the United States are single parents with no support, alone with children. And children do make 24-hour demands, little babies, and don't do much for you in return. And so parents can get frustrated. For example, in the United States, with every 10% increase in unemployment, there's a 10% increase in shaken baby syndrome in the courts. Shaken baby syndrome happens when people are so angry, usually fathers because they're stronger, although women do this too. They get so angry that the baby won't stop crying that they shake them until the infant's brains turn to jelly, or in more mild cases, they just go blind or deaf or hurt some other area of their brain. But that's a whole lot less likely in France when someone comes to visit you as soon as you get home and takes care of whatever you need for at least one day a week, and where you get free medical care. That's a very different scene. So they have proportionally many fewer abused children. Now, that is a big help in the nuclear family. In addition, all French employees are guaranteed by the government 5 weeks of paid vacation. That means they have family time. They can take off to be with their children, if they're home with their children or they're away with their children. Even Brazil gives 6 weeks of paid family vacation. We have no guaranteed family vacations in the United States. Also, the French give generous maternity and paternity leaves when a child is born. America is one of the few countries in the world that doesn't have any paid maternity leave. The other countries that don't have paid maternity leave are Somalia, a failed state, Papua New Guinea, Swaziland, the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Nauru, Palau, and Tonga. Very poor and underdeveloped countries. No wonder American families are in such trouble. No wonder the biggest trend among married couples is no children. No wonder the United States is not one of the top 20 nations in the world that are advantageous for women to live in, because women often have children. So what can we do about this? What can we do about the fact that one of the biggest causes of death of women between 15 and 44 years old is murder by their husbands or boyfriends, and why 85% of the homicides of children are because of relatives or their parents. And the biggest cause of death of children in the United States is guns, because their parents leave loaded guns around the house. These are all very dangerous things that would not happen if we took care of our children in good public universal childcare centers. And we all know that that happens because anyone reading the paper can read stories about 6-year-old boy beaten to death by parents, children brought to school with bed sores all over themselves from bed bugs and roaches crawling out of their clothes and books. Children found beaten, starved, abused. Look it up on the internet. There's no question that you'll find it. So what are alternatives? What can help American families so their kids are not in such trouble? And neither are they, and neither are women in the United States. Well, we already have some alternatives that are out there, although they're not developed and they're not state endorsed. One of them is co-housing. There are people who buy land together or who buy an apartment or rent a whole apartment building together, in which there are married people, unmarried people, people with children, people without children, people who want to cooperate and take care of each other's children, people who have a communal dining facility where they can make meals together. There are also, unfortunately, expensive apartment complexes in New York, San Francisco, and elsewhere that have very small units for individuals or families and big collective units where there are films, where there's communal dining, where there's communal cooking, where there's games, where there's chance to get together. Sweden had quite a few of those housing units that were built because increasingly people are single and therefore don't want to necessarily have an elaborate kitchen, but a chance to dine with other people. Those have been around for a long time. When I was a little girl, I used to visit and albeit for well-heeled people, that's how they're available in the United States, I used to visit my grandmother at Residential Hotel Olcott on 79th Street in Manhattan. She was a lawyer whose husband had died way before, and she lived in a little apartment in a very nicely kept apartment house, and it had a little closet-like kitchen and a lovely living room and a bedroom and a bathroom. And there was a big communal dining hall downstairs where dinner was served. And there were other places where people could watch a film together and play board games together to foster a single life of professionals, but at cost. Same thing is true with those developments in San Francisco, catered towards single people, but who want contact with other people. There are also movements. The settlement house movement in the United States in the 1800s had communal kitchens where people could come and pick up a meal in the neighborhood, and they had communal and domestic services that went from apartment to apartment, cleaning industrially, so people didn't have to do their own cleaning. There's also communal elder care, usually not such great retirement homes, but there are such things. And where in France they have excellent mental health care. It's not covered by the healthcare plan, but it's approved of, and it's everywhere. And they provide elder care for older people who are losing their minds or getting sick. that is civilized and kind. Humans have basic needs. And if we're going to really replace the family, which we have to since it doesn't function well anymore, we need to take care of people's basic needs outside and not make them commodities that people have to buy so only those with money can afford them. Those basic needs are nutrition. We need to provide for everyone nutritious food. One of the reasons that Americans die sooner every year is that we don't have a lot of healthy food. In order to help our capitalist system, our food is laced with preservatives so it lasts longer, even if it's not nutritious and quite the opposite, not healthy. We also have the public peddling on television and everywhere else of junk food, Fritos, Cheetos, and Doritos, which have tiny nutritional value. We also don't have proper childcare and after-school programs so that children are left alone while their parents are at work and are not allowed to cook because it's dangerous and are given big snacks like Fritos, Cheetos, Doritos, and all of those other things full of preservatives which are unhealthy. Or their exhausted parents can take them to fast food, also unhealthy. Places like McDonald's that has little prizes for kids to encourage families, often have playgrounds so tired parents can sit there while their kids are out right outside the window playing in playgrounds. But they have fatty, non-nutritious, long-time frozen foods. At one point, there was a study comparing American children's diet at home waiting for their parents eating junk food with that of a Nigerian starving child who had a half a cup of lentils every day as the only food. They found that the American children home eating junk food got as much nutrition as the starving child who only had a cup of lentils every day. We also need clean water. There are whole communities where the water is polluted because it saves money for the township. Newark recently had a huge scare on that. The water was unhealthy. The New York public housing had brown water and had to provide bottled water. People who can afford it increasingly buy bottled water or buy their own filtration systems so that they can meet that basic human need of clean water to drink. We also need clean air. Poor people more frequently live right next to the highway or near incinerators and near heavy industry, which is why poor children have double the rate of asthma that privileged children have. We also need free, quality health care, which is obvious so that people don't die sooner, as Americans are doing, increasingly dying sooner every year. And our maternal death rates and our infant death rates are greater than those of some underdeveloped countries like Cuba, which has a good public healthcare system. Another human need is being warm in winters so that we can survive, and cooler in high temperatures so we can survive well. So that's free heating and cooling, not commodities for which you have to pay your bill. And if you can't, you're in danger. Every year, elderly people die because they can't afford to turn on an air conditioner or to have one. And therefore they die of the heat. They also need exercise where they can go outside and move without being afraid, which means they need laws against guns. As I mentioned before, the biggest cause of children's death in the United States is guns left around. And the fact that the capitalist gun lobby, the National Rifle Association, has at least 47 senators who they support and who oblige them for voting to eliminate all gun restrictions. We're the only Western European or any kind of society in the world that allows people to own automatic weapons. People have to be safe. They have to be in gun-free areas. They also need free medical care, which is something the French provide, and so do many other societies. All the Scandinavian societies provide free health care, free elder care, free child care. Netherlands does too. And so we take those things out of the private profit sphere. Those are things we can do. We can achieve them. Other societies like France, all over Scandinavia, the Netherlands, all have these things. Why don't we? Well, I think we don't, because we don't have a unified movement that addresses class issues like fair wages, that addresses health issues, that addresses climate change, which is a big health issue, that addresses equality of opportunity and pay, which addresses racism and sexism, and which addresses capitalist profiteering off our basic means to live. We need a unity of all of us, like they did in Colombia, to win the first socialist government that they've had, or in Chile, which recently won a socialist government, or even around the abortion issue where they won in Ireland or in Argentina. We can do that. The French did that. Mélenchon is the head of a unity movement. That's why when they tried to raise the pension era, because everyone is guaranteed a pension in France after 30 years of accumulated labor, they had 4 million people out in the streets protesting because they are unified. They have their unions there, feminist organizations, Black equality organizations. They have their climate organizations, all united to create a better life for everybody, because we are the majority, all of us together who are shafted. And even if you just took the 44.7% of Americans who scramble not only from paycheck to paycheck, but from emergency to emergency to allow themselves to live properly, we could unite with all those people who care about their environment and their nutrition, and we would win. So we need to unite in a broad socialist movement that unites all of us for a better quality of personal life, and to really support families and not just count on family, which has failed to give us our emotional connection or keep us safe in childhood or in adulthood. Thank you very much for listening. This is Harriet Fraad bringing you Capitalism Hits Home, sponsored by Democracy at Work. And if you are interested in this or other podcasts or the merchandise and messages we have, go to www.democracyatwork.info. We welcome you and all your contributions, financial, personal, and all the others. Thank you very much. Goodbye.